What happens when a British royal, trained for decades to handle the press with grace, finally loses his composure on live television? What happens when carefully managed PR collides with a journalist who refuses to play by the rules? On what should have been a routine morning at NBC's Rockefeller Center, Prince Harry arrived looking polished, smiling, and seemingly ready to promote his latest memoir. The plan was simple: 20 minutes of polite conversation, a few stories about fatherhood, and some words about his charitable work. But Savannah Guthrie had other ideas. The Today Show, once the undisputed king of morning television, had been struggling in the ratings. Everyone in the control room knew that softball interviews weren't going to cut it anymore. Savannah, typically warm and diplomatic, came prepared with a different approach, one that would soon push Harry past his limits. The opening was as expected. Savannah greeted Harry with her trademark smile, congratulating him on the book's success. Harry responded with his usual charm, thanking the viewers and talking about how much he appreciated the American public's support. Then Savannah pivoted. "Harry, there have been persistent reports about conversations you've had with certain members of your family regarding the monarchy's future," she began, her tone cool but deliberate. "Can you address those directly?" Harry's expression changed instantly. The polite smile faltered, replaced with a hard, guarded stare. His publicist, seated just off camera, immediately tensed. "Savannah," Harry said in a voice that carried quiet warning, "you know that's not something I'm here to discuss." But Savannah pressed on. "I understand it's sensitive, but these reports suggest discussions about succession, issues that affect millions of people. Don't viewers deserve some clarity?" The tension in the studio became palpable. Producers exchanged frantic looks in the control room. Camera operators hesitated, unsure whether to zoom in or hold their shots. Harry leaned forward, voice dropping to a lower, sharper register. "Let me be very clear about something. There are lines that responsible journalists know not to cross, and what you're doing right now crosses those lines." Savannah's smile faded, but her eyes sharpened. "With respect, Harry, you've written about private family matters in your book and spoken about them in multiple interviews. How is this any different?" Harry's hands tightened around the armrests of his chair. "Consent, context, that's the difference. What you're doing right now is neither." The polite mask had cracked, and Savannah wasn't backing down. The air in Studio 1A felt heavy, the kind of tension that made every crew member hyper-aware of their movements. The usual rhythm of a morning show interview, friendly questions, rehearsed answers, was gone. Harry's eyes had darkened, his expression hardening as Savannah calmly held his gaze. She was no longer smiling. Her tone had shifted from warm host to sharp journalist. "With respect, Harry," Savannah continued, her voice controlled but firm, "you wrote in your book about private conversations with your father and brother. You quoted their words. You detailed phone calls. How can you draw the line now and claim certain topics are off limits?" Harry inhaled sharply, leaning closer to the desk. "Because those were my choices, my stories to tell. What you're doing right now is trying to extract information I have deliberately chosen not to share, and you're doing it on live television." Savannah's brow furrowed. "Isn't that just selective transparency? You profit from sharing personal stories when it suits you, but bristle at accountability when asked to clarify them." That line struck a nerve. Harry's fists clenched, resting on the table now, his voice dropping even lower. "Accountability? Don't lecture me about accountability. You have no idea what it's like to grow up in my world, to have every moment of your life scrutinized, dissected, and distorted." Savannah's jaw tightened, but she didn't back down. "I've been a journalist for 2 decades. I've interviewed presidents, world leaders, Nobel Prize winners. I've reported from disaster zones and war fronts. I know scrutiny. What I'm doing now is my job, holding a public figure accountable for the claims he's made publicly." The studio crew shifted uneasily. Harry's security detail, usually invisible, now stood slightly more alert. His publicist leaned forward, visibly uncomfortable, mouthing something that looked like, "Wrap this up." But Savannah wasn't finished. "Harry, you've made millions from this story. Netflix deals, book contracts, paid speeches. Don't you think the public has a right to question whether you've turned personal pain into profit?" Harry let out a cold laugh, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. So now I'm not allowed to speak about my experiences unless I do it for free? That's absurd. I've used my platform to highlight issues that matter: mental health, veterans' welfare, systemic racism. But apparently none of that counts because I dared to speak my truth in a way that makes people uncomfortable. Savannah's lips curled into a faint, humorless smile. It's not about discomfort, Harry. It's about the fact that you seem to want all the benefits of being a public figure without any of the scrutiny that comes with it. You can't have it both ways. The room went completely silent. Camera operators exchanged glances, unsure whether to cut to commercial. The control room buzzed with frantic discussions, but no one dared interrupt what was clearly becoming one of the most explosive interviews in morning television history. Harry leaned back in his chair, jaw tight, nostrils flaring. What you're doing right now isn't journalism. It's ambush entertainment dressed up as news. Savannah's eyes narrowed slightly, her voice taking on an edge rarely seen on the Today Show. Asking you to answer for your own words isn't an ambush. It's basic accountability. If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't have written the book in the first place. Harry's composure wavered for the first time. The practiced media training was slipping, revealing raw anger beneath. "You've made this personal," he said, voice low and sharp. "Don't think I don't see it." Savannah straightened her posture, her tone cool but firm. "It's not personal, Harry, it's journalism. And maybe that's what bothers you the most." The words hung in the air, electric, as viewers at home watched history being made in real time. Harry's jaw was tight, his eyes flashing with the kind of anger that years of royal media training had tried to suppress. The polite prince persona was gone. What sat across from Savannah Guthrie now was a man who felt cornered and betrayed. "You're twisting my words," Harry said sharply, his voice lower now, but far more dangerous. "I came here in good faith to discuss my book and my charity work. That was the agreement. And instead, you've turned this into a spectacle, an ambush designed to humiliate me." Savannah didn't flinch. "Asking you about your own public statements isn't humiliation, Harry. You've made very serious claims about your family and the institution you left behind. You've profited from those claims. The public has a right to question you about them." Harry leaned forward, his hands pressed flat against the table. "Profited? You think my life, my pain, my experiences are just a way to make money? You have no idea what I've sacrificed. You sit here in your cushy studio, lecturing me about privilege, while you exploit other people's lives for ratings every single day." That struck a nerve. Savannah's lips tightened, and for the first time she raised her voice slightly. "Don't you dare lecture me about privilege, Harry. I've worked for everything I have. I've earned my place by asking tough questions. Questions that people in power don't want to answer. What you're doing now, that's not courage. That's selective storytelling." Harry laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "Selective storytelling? I wrote my truth, my life, my perspective, and yes, I decided what to share and what to protect. That's my right." Savannah leaned closer, her eyes locked on his. "It's also your responsibility. You can't demand sympathy and support while refusing scrutiny. That's not how accountability works." The control room was in chaos, producers arguing whether to cut to commercial or let the cameras keep rolling. The executive producer's voice could be heard barking orders, but no one on set was listening. The crew sensed they were witnessing something unprecedented, a moment that would dominate headlines for weeks. Harry sat back, his breathing sharper now, his composure fully unraveling. "You've crossed the line, Savannah. This isn't journalism anymore. It's a personal attack." "No, Harry," Savannah shot back, her voice now carrying steel. "It's the first real interview you've ever had." The audience at home could feel the shift. The gloves were off, the tension so thick it was suffocating. Harry's security detail stepped slightly closer. His publicist gestured frantically toward the exit, silently begging him to end it. But Harry wasn't leaving, not yet. "You want accountability?" Harry said, standing suddenly, his chair scraping back against the floor. "Then let's talk about yours, Savannah. You invited me here under false pretenses. You lied to my team about the purpose of this interview. So tell me, who's being dishonest now?" Savannah rose from her seat as well, matching his height, her eyes blazing. You agreed to talk about your book. Your book is full of personal claims and private conversations. If you can't handle follow-up questions, maybe you shouldn't have written it. The standoff was total. Two powerful figures, each convinced they were right, glaring at each other as millions watched. Harry's voice was low, almost a growl. You're not a journalist. You're an entertainer. And this is theater. Savannah's answer was immediate, cutting, and merciless. Funny, because that's exactly what people say about you. The words landed like a slap, and for the first time, Harry looked like he might walk off set completely. The studio felt like it was holding its breath. Camera operators gripped their rigs tighter. Producers in the control room barked orders no one on set could follow. And Harry stood there, fists clenched, glaring at Savannah as if daring her to speak again. You invited me here under false pretenses, Harry said, his voice shaking with anger. This wasn't supposed to be a cross-examination. It was supposed to be a conversation about my book and my charitable work. But you, he jabbed a finger toward her, you decided to turn it into a personal attack. Savannah took a deliberate step forward, closing the space between them. No, Harry, what I did was ask you to answer for your own words. You've spent years selling your version of events to the public, profiting from every detail you've chosen to share. And now that you're being asked real questions, you call it an attack? That's not integrity. That's hypocrisy. Harry's jaw flexed and his voice dropped into a dangerous calm. Hypocrisy? You sit here pretending to be a journalist when all you care about is a viral clip. You don't want the truth, you want a spectacle. And congratulations, Savannah, because that's exactly what you've created. Savannah's eyes blazed. What I want is accountability. You made millions talking about private family matters. On your terms, in your words. Now, when pressed, you hide behind privacy. You can't have it both ways. Harry's face flushed red, the anger radiating off him. You think you know what it's like to live my life? You think you have any right to judge the choices I've made? Savannah didn't move an inch. I think when someone profits from telling their story, they open themselves up to questions. That's not cruelty, Harry. That's journalism. Harry's laugh was bitter, hollow. Journalism? No, Savannah. This is entertainment dressed up as news. You don't care about the truth. You care about tearing me down because it makes good television. Savannah finally raised her voice, sharp and cutting. No, I care about holding powerful people accountable, even if those people happen to be princes. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. The crew flinched. Harry's security detail stepped closer, their eyes locked on him, ready for anything. Harry stepped toward her, closing the distance. You have no idea what you've just done, he said quietly, his voice icy. You've proven to everyone watching that you're nothing more than a tabloid hack hiding behind the word journalist. Savannah's jaw tightened. At least I earned my position through my work, not because of who my grandmother was. That line landed like a physical blow. Several crew members would later admit they physically recoiled. Harry froze, his face twisting with fury. Then he turned sharply towards his security detail. Get her out of my sight, he said, voice deadly calm. Now. The control room erupted into chaos. Security staff, unsure what to do, stepped forward but hesitated. This was unprecedented. A royal demanding that the host be removed from her own show. Savannah stared at him, stunned but defiant. You can't have me removed from my own studio, she said, her voice shaking with rage. Harry turned back, smiling coldly. Watch me. The crew realized this interview had just crossed the point of no return. The silence that followed Harry's words, watch me, was deafening. For a split second, everyone on set froze as if time itself had stopped. Then, NBC security staff stepped forward, unsure of how to proceed. No guest had ever demanded that the host of the Today Show be removed from her own studio. Savannah stood her ground, eyes locked on Harry, her voice laced with controlled fury. You think you can silence anyone who challenges you, Harry? That might have worked in the palace, but this is real journalism. We don't bow to royalty here. Harry smirked coldly. This isn't journalism. It's humiliation disguised as accountability. You've crossed the line, Savannah. And today, the world got to see exactly who you are. Savannah's reply was immediate, sharp, and cutting. And the world saw who you are too. A man who profits from his pain, but can't handle a single tough question about it. That final remark broke something in Harry. His face hardened, his eyes flashing with raw anger. Enough, he said, turning to his security detail. We're done here. His bodyguards closed in around him, creating a protective wall as producers in the control room shouted conflicting instructions. Cut to commercial, keep rolling, capture everything. Harry ripped off his microphone, the wire snapping loose as he stood tall, every inch the defiant prince. He glanced back at Savannah one final time. You want headlines? He said, his voice low and steady. Congratulations. You've just made yourself the headline. But don't pretend this was journalism. It was a performance, and it will follow you forever. With that, Harry turned and strode toward the exit, his security detail flanking him closely. The cameras followed him as he left the set. Every step a historic scandal unfolding live on air. Savannah remained standing at her desk, her expression a mix of shock and steely resolve. She didn't look at the cameras. She didn't say a word. Harry disappeared through the studio doors, leaving behind stunned crew members, frantic producers, and a live audience watching history in the making. Social media exploded within minutes. Clips went viral, hashtags trended worldwide, and pundits immediately began debating who was right and who had crossed the line. What was supposed to be a 20-minute book promotion had become one of the most infamous moments in morning television history. The day Prince Harry lost control on live TV. Savannah finally exhaled, looked straight into the camera, and delivered the last words of the broadcast with quiet finality. This is what accountability looks like. The screen faded to black. The world would be talking about this moment for years.